The girl sold for being lame. The rich rancher saw the truth in her eyes. On the edge of a dry and dusty settlement, under a bright sun that never seemed to rest, there was an auction. The sound of hooves clattered through the streets as the people of Dust Haven gathered. The small town, a place where wealth was rare but hard-earned, was about to witness a transaction that would change one life forever. Among the crowd, Kira stood still, her face stoic, her eyes watching everything around her. She wasn't used to being surrounded by so many people. She had always preferred solitude, a trait that had grown stronger since the injury that had left her leg permanently lame. The limp was something she couldn't hide, and in a world that valued strength and speed, she had been overlooked for much of her life. She had been sold before, not in the way she was now, but in a way that left a mark on her heart. The people who took her in after her family turned away weren't kind. They treated her as if she were broken, not just in body but in spirit too. She could feel their pity, their whispers when they thought she couldn't hear. But Kira wasn't broken. She was just different. Today she was being sold again, this time for her so-called worthlessness. She had a limp, and in Dust Haven, a limp meant you were no good for manual labor. Kira knew this, and yet she didn't show it. She didn't let anyone see the hurt behind her eyes. Her hands were bound with rough rope, but she held her head high. Her eyes flickered over to the auctioneer, a man with a thick beard and a crooked smile. He had no interest in her beyond her value in the auction. To him, Kira was just another piece of merchandise, a product to be bought and sold. And yet, she had something inside of her that he couldn't see. She looked out over the crowd, her gaze falling on the faces of the people who stood around her. Most were farmers, ranchers, or traders, their clothing worn and weathered. Some looked at her with pity, others with indifference. But in the back, she noticed one man standing tall, his figure unmistakable in the crowd. He was dressed in fine clothes, the kind of clothes that only the rich wore in Dust Haven. A long coat, boots polished to a shine, and a hat that shaded his face just enough to keep his eyes hidden from view. This man was different. There was something about him that caught her attention. His gaze met hers for just a moment, and something shifted in Kira. There was no pity in his eyes, no judgment. Instead, there was something else, something hard to describe but unmistakable. It was as if he saw something in her that no one else did. The auctioneer's voice broke through her thoughts. Next up, we have Kira, a young girl crippled by an old injury. She's fit for light work, but don't expect her to run with the best. A mere 50 credits should be enough for her. Who will start the bidding? A few hands went up, but not many. Everyone knew Kira wasn't worth much. Her limp made her unsuitable for the hard labor that was expected in Dust Haven. Her life, it seemed, was to be spent doing menial tasks, tasks that could barely earn her a place in the world. But the man at the back of the crowd didn't move. He stood still, watching, his eyes fixed on Kira. For some reason, he couldn't take his gaze off her. There was something about her quiet strength, the way she held herself despite her injury. It was something rare in this town. And Tice Maverick, the rancher who owned the biggest cattle herd in Dust Haven, was always on the lookout for things that were rare. "I'll bid 100 credits, Tice Maverick called out, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. There was a pause. The crowd turned to look at him. The rancher was known for his cold, calculating nature. He didn't buy people, not unless they could bring something to his ranch that he could use. But something about Kira had caught his eye, and he wasn't about to let her go without at least seeing what she had to offer. 100 credits, the auctioneer repeated. Do I hear 150? But no one else bid. Everyone knew the girl wasn't worth much. They didn't see what Tice saw. And so, the gavel came down with a sharp crack. Sold! To Tice Maverick for 100 credits. The crowd began to disperse, but Kira stood still. She had been sold, but she didn't feel like she was being freed. She felt like she was being chained to another place, another life that would judge her for what she was. Tice approached her slowly, his boots making soft thuds against the dirt. He untied the rope around her wrists, his fingers quick and efficient. As he did, he studied her face closely, noticing the calmness that seemed to be her constant companion. Let's get you settled, he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Kira nodded silently, not trusting herself to speak. She had learned long ago that words could only get in the way. She would follow him, as she had followed others before, but there was something different about this man. There was something in his eyes that made her think that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going to be treated like a piece of broken goods. As they walked to the wagon that would take her to Maverick's ranch, Kira stole another glance at him. He was tall, his posture straight, and his expression unreadable, but there was a faint glimmer of something in his eyes that told her he wasn't like the others. He wasn't here to break her. He was here to see what she was made of. The ride to Maverick's ranch was long and silent. Kira sat in the back of the wagon, watching the dry landscape pass by. The air was thick with dust, and the sun beat down relentlessly, but she didn't mind. She had grown used to the heat over the years. What was harder to get used to was the feeling of being watched. Tice Maverick didn't say much as they traveled. He kept his eyes ahead, focused on the road, but Kira could feel his gaze occasionally flicker to her, studying her, and it made her uncomfortable. She wasn't used to people looking at her like she mattered. They often only looked at her to see what she lacked. Kira had been sold before, but this time felt different. This man was different. He didn't pity her, not like the others who had looked at her with sorrowful eyes. Instead, there was a quiet intensity in his gaze, as if he was trying to figure her out. For the first time in a long while, Kira wondered if there was something in her that could be worth something to him, but she quickly pushed the thought away. She was only a burden, a girl with a limp, and no amount of hope could change that. As the wagon rattled over the bumpy path, Kira's mind wandered. She thought about the life she had left behind in Dust Haven. It had been a hard life, but at least it was familiar. Here, with Tice Maverick, she felt like she was entering the unknown. The ranch came into view as they rounded a hill. It was bigger than anything Kira had ever seen. Rows of cattle grazed peacefully in the distance, and buildings stretched out across the land. The sound of ranch hands shouting commands to the livestock could be heard in the wind. It was a world far different from the small broken life she had known before. Tice stopped the wagon at the edge of the ranch, where a group of workers was standing, watching them. They were rough-looking men, dressed in worn-out clothes, their faces marked by years of hard labor. Some of them looked at Kira with curiosity, others with suspicion. They didn't know her, and in a place like this, that meant she was an outsider. Tice jumped down from the wagon and motioned for Kira to follow. She hesitated for a moment before climbing down, her bad leg protesting the movement. She felt the eyes of the ranch hands on her, but she ignored them. She had learned long ago that it was better not to pay attention to how people looked at you. Everyone, this is Kira, Tice said, his voice loud enough for the workers to hear. She'll be helping out around the ranch. Don't make her feel out of place. She's here to work just like the rest of you. The workers didn't say anything, but Kira could tell that they were sizing her up. She didn't mind. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to survive. Tice led her to a small cabin, separate from the main house. This will be your place, he said. You'll sleep here, and you'll work with the others. No special treatment, but no one's going to treat you poorly either. I don't tolerate that on my ranch. Kira nodded, her throat tight. She had never been treated with respect like this. There was something different about Tice Maverick. He didn't see her as weak or less than. He simply saw her as another worker, another person who could contribute. That night, Kira lay in the small cabin, the sounds of the ranch drifting in through the window. She thought about her past, about the pain and the loneliness, but she pushed those thoughts aside. She had a job to do, and in a way that felt like enough. She wasn't just a girl who had been sold. She was someone with a purpose again. The next morning, Kira woke early, as was her habit. She dressed quickly and stepped outside into the cool morning air. The ranch was already alive with movement. Ranch hands moved with purpose, gathering cattle, checking the fences, and preparing for the day's work. Tice was already on horseback, riding toward the herd. Kira watched him for a moment, then made her way toward the barn where the other workers were gathering. As she walked, she caught the eye of one of the ranch hands, a tall man with a rough face and a scar across his cheek. He looked her up and down, and for a moment she felt a pang of doubt. But she quickly shook it off. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to prove that she could do the work, that she was worth more than just a broken leg. When Kira reached the barn, she was handed a task, sorting through the hay to feed the cattle. It wasn't difficult work, but it was tedious, and Kira quickly got to work. As the morning passed, she felt a sense of satisfaction in her task. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Tice came by later in the morning, riding up to the barn. He glanced over at Kira, who was busy with the hay, and then nodded to himself. You're doing good work, he said. His voice was low, but it was the first time he'd spoken to her like that, not like a pity case, not like someone who had been thrown away. He spoke to her like she was just another part of the ranch, and that meant more to her than he could ever know. Thanks, Kira replied, her voice steady. She didn't look up, but she didn't need to. She knew that his approval, in whatever small form it came, was something she had earned. As the day went on, Kira worked alongside the others. She was slower than the rest of them, but she didn't let that discourage her. She pushed herself harder, determined to prove that she was capable, that her limp didn't define her. With every task, every chore, she felt a little bit stronger, a little bit more like she belonged. That evening, as the sun set over the ranch, Tice approached her again. He was sitting on a barrel near the barn, his hands resting on his knees. He looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "You're not like the others," he said, his voice quiet. "You've got a different kind of strength. I can see it." Kira looked at him, unsure of what to say. She wasn't used to people noticing her strength. It was always her weaknesses that people saw first. But with Tice, it was different. "I don't give up," Kira said, her voice soft but firm. Tice nodded slowly. "I can tell. Keep that attitude. It'll get you far." Kira nodded back, feeling a small sense of pride stir within her. She wasn't just a girl with a limp anymore. She was someone who had found her place in this vast, unforgiving world, and maybe, just maybe, she would find a way to make her mark here, in this strange new life. The days at Maverick's ranch passed quickly. Kira worked hard, just like the others, but with each passing day she grew stronger. The physical labor didn't come easy. Her leg often throbbed with pain, and it slowed her down. But what the others didn't know was that Kira had grown used to pain. It was her constant companion, and it never held her back. The ranch hands had started to warm up to her. At first they had kept their distance, unsure of what to make of the girl with the limp, but now they saw that Kira could do the work. She was no longer just the girl who had been bought for a low price at the auction. She was a part of the team. Kira spent most of her days in the stables or in the fields. She fed the cattle, helped with the repairs on the fences, and worked alongside the other ranch hands to keep the place running smoothly. Her limp didn't slow her down as much as it once had. She had learned how to move with it, to adapt. And with each task she completed, her confidence grew. But it wasn't just the work that made her feel like she belonged. It was the way Tice Maverick looked at her. Tice had been distant at first, only speaking to her when necessary. He was the boss, and she was just another worker. But over time, things had changed. He began to notice the small things about her. He noticed how she moved with grace despite her limp. He saw how her eyes seemed to see things that others didn't, how she always thought 2 steps ahead, anticipating problems before they happened. Tice began to respect her not just as a worker, but as someone who had a quiet strength. One evening after a long day's work, Tice came to the barn where Kira was finishing up the last of her chores. He leaned against the wooden beams, watching her. Kira didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on the task at hand, brushing down one of the cows. "Long day?" Tice asked, his voice breaking the silence. Kira looked up, surprised to see him standing there. She wiped the sweat from her brow and nodded. "Yes, but I'm used to it. You've been working harder than most of the others. I can tell you've got more to offer than people think." Kira didn't know how to respond to that. She had always been told that her injury made her weak, that she would never be good enough, but Tice's words were different. There was no pity in them, just recognition. It made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "I do what I can," she said, her voice steady but quiet. Tice smiled, a small but genuine smile. "You do more than that. You're not like anyone else on this ranch." She wasn't sure what he meant by that, but the way he said it made her feel like she mattered. Like she wasn't just a burden, like she wasn't broken. For a moment, the air between them was still. The ranch, which was usually so full of noise and movement, felt calm and peaceful. It was just the two of them, standing in the dim light of the barn, and for the first time, Kira didn't feel out of place. Tice cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "I've been meaning to ask you something." Kira looked up at him, surprised. "What?" "To the ranch, I mean. You could have gone somewhere else. Maybe found a different life." Kira thought about that for a moment. It was a question she had asked herself many times, but she had never really come up with an answer. She had been sold yes, but that wasn't why she had stayed. "I didn't have a choice," Kira said softly. "I came here because there was nowhere else for me to go. I've always been pushed aside, treated like I'm not good enough. But when I saw this ranch, I don't know. It felt like a place where I could prove I wasn't worthless." Tice didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Kira wondered if she had said too much, but then he spoke again, his voice low. "I see the truth in your eyes," he said. "You're not just here to survive. You're here to prove something. And I admire that." Kira felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something close, something she hadn't felt in years. Respect. The kind of respect that wasn't given because of pity or obligation, but because it was earned. "You don't have to prove anything to me," Tice added, his voice softer now. "But I see you. I see the strength in you. And I think one day the others will see it too." Kira smiled, a small, grateful smile. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. Maybe she wasn't just the girl with a limp. Maybe she was someone who could make a difference. The next day, Tice called Kira over to him as he stood by the fence, watching the cattle. Kira approached him slowly, unsure of what he wanted. "I've been thinking," Tice said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You're more than capable of doing the harder work here. I want you to start helping with the cattle. There's a herd that needs to be moved to a new pasture. It's dangerous work, but I think you're up for it." Kira's heart raced. This was the chance she had been waiting for. She had always wanted to prove herself, to show that she wasn't weak. But she also knew the risks. Moving cattle wasn't easy, especially with her leg. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation, surprising herself. Tice turned to her with a nod. "I knew you would." The two of them spent the next few days working together to move the herd. It was hard work, and there were moments when Kira's leg made it difficult to keep up. But she didn't stop. She pushed herself, focusing on the task at hand. She refused to let her injury define her. Not anymore. By the end of the week, the cattle were safely in the new pasture. Tice came to her at the end of the day, his face soft with approval. "You did good work. I told you that you had something in you." Kira smiled, feeling a sense of pride she hadn't known in years. It wasn't about the cattle or the ranch. It was about proving to herself that she was capable, that she had something to offer, and for the first time, Kira believed it. The weeks that followed were filled with hard work. Kira's life on the ranch had settled into a rhythm. Every day, she woke early, ate a simple breakfast, and went straight to the stables to help with the cattle. Her legs still gave her trouble, but she had learned to manage it. She worked slowly but steadily, taking breaks when needed but never stopping. She had learned to pace herself, understanding that strength wasn't always about speed. It was about endurance. Tice had kept his promise. He gave her more responsibility. Every day she helped move cattle, repair fences, and handle the ranch's daily tasks. Slowly she became a vital part of the team. The workers who had once ignored her began to show her respect. They saw her work ethic, her determination, and they realized she wasn't just the girl with a limp. She was someone they could count on. As the days passed, Kira felt a sense of belonging that she had never known before. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. She was becoming a part of something bigger than herself, something she could be proud of. And yet, there was always a feeling of something more in the air. Tice had always been kind to her, but he hadn't shown much more than that, at least not openly. Kira often wondered what he saw in her, why he had chosen her that day at the auction. It was one cool morning when she found herself standing next to him, overlooking the land. The sun was still low in the sky, casting long shadows over the ranch. The wind was gentle and the air smelled of fresh earth. The cattle grazed quietly in the distance, and Kira felt a strange peace wash over her. It was moments like this, in the quiet of the morning, that she felt most at home. "I've been thinking," Tice said, his voice breaking the stillness. Kira looked at him. "About what?" "You've done a lot for this ranch," he said, his eyes scanning the land. "I've watched you work hard. You've earned my respect, and the respect of the men. I'm just doing my part." Tice nodded, his face serious. "I know you are. But it's more than that. You've brought something to this ranch that no one else has. You've shown us all that strength doesn't come from how fast you work, but from how hard you're willing to fight for what you believe in." Kira didn't know how to respond. She had never been told that she had strength before. She had always been made to feel weak, broken, because of her limp. But Tice was different. He saw her differently. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I would be able to do something like this. I never thought anyone would look at me and see something worth valuing." Tice turned to face her, his expression softening. "You're not just worth valuing, Kira. You're worth trusting. And that's why I need your help." Kira frowned, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" "I'm planning to expand the ranch," Tice explained. "There's a piece of land on the other side of the valley, but it's not easy to reach. The land is wild, untamed, and we've had trouble with the cattle crossing through it. There are thick forests, steep hills, and even a few wild animals roaming the area. But if we can make it work, it will double the size of the ranch and give us room to grow." Kira listened carefully, her curiosity piqued. And what do you need me to do? I need someone to lead the cattle across the valley. The others are busy with the regular chores, and I trust you. I need you to take the lead on this one. Kira's heart raced. This was it, the chance she had been waiting for. It wasn't just about moving cattle or doing the chores anymore. This was something bigger, something that would prove her worth to Tice, to the whole ranch. But there was a part of her that felt uncertain. She had never taken on a challenge like this before. I'm ready, Kira said, her voice steady despite the nerves she felt inside. Tice studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I know you are. The next morning, Kira prepared for the journey. Tice had given her a map of the land, and she spent hours studying it. The valley was vast, and the path was difficult. There were rocky hills to climb and dense trees to navigate, but Kira was determined. She wasn't going to let her limp hold her back. This was her chance to prove that she belonged here, that she had something to offer. Tice sent along a few of the ranch hands to help guide the cattle, but Kira was the one in charge. She led them through the first part of the journey, carefully choosing the path that would be safest for the herd. The cattle moved slowly but steadily, their hooves crunching against the dry earth. The journey was long, and Kira's leg ached with every step, but she didn't stop. She pressed on, leading the cattle through the difficult terrain. As the day wore on, the landscape grew more rugged. The path became steeper, the trees thicker, the cattle were nervous, and Kira could feel the tension in the air. They had to cross a narrow bridge to reach the other side of the valley, and it was a dangerous place. One wrong move and the cattle could fall into the river below. Kira took a deep breath. She knew what she had to do. All right, we're going to cross the bridge slowly, she called to the workers behind her. Keep the cattle calm. We don't want to startle them. The workers followed her instructions, and one by one, the cattle made their way across the bridge. Kira kept her eyes on the herd, her heart pounding. She was so focused on the task that she didn't notice the figure that had appeared behind her. Tice had followed her. He had been watching from a distance, but now he was close. He had seen the way Kira took charge, how she had led the cattle with confidence despite the challenges. When they reached the other side, Tice caught up to her. He looked at her, a mixture of pride and admiration in his eyes. You did it, he said quietly. Kira felt a rush of relief. We did it. Tice smiled, a genuine smile that made Kira's heart skip a beat. No, Kira, you did it. The journey wasn't over, but Kira knew something had changed. She wasn't just a girl who had been sold for being lame. She was someone who had proven her worth, not just to Tice, but to herself. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the valley, Kira looked out at the land she had helped tame. This ranch, this land, was hers now too. She had worked for it, fought for it, and in doing so had found her place in a world that had once overlooked her.